As a solo player, I'm really liking this. So far, so good. There's a lot of build synergy with it, lots of moving parts, and today I want to set you up with what you need to know about it. Dragon's Breath is back, totally redesigned. Like in Destiny 1, you would shoot it, hold the button, release, a little pool of fire would go off, that's it. But now it's bringing a little bit more. And before we get into what you need to remember as you're playing, some of the little things about it, some synergies and more, a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Factor 75. Factor 75 cuts out stressful meal planning and extensive prepping. The meals arrive pre-prepared, ready to eat in 2 minutes or less, taking the guesswork out of what to make for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And this helps avoid fast food and ordering in. It's cheaper than ordering in all the time and a whole lot better for you. Factor offers meals for those looking to follow keto, low-calorie, vegan, vegetarian lifestyles. No prep, no mess. If you've been with me for a while, you know I love to cook. But I also have to work here at my desk. So ready in 2 minutes or less, it has all the nutrients I need, no prep or cleanup, just focus on what I need to do. There's over 34 chef-crafted meals and over 45 add-ons each week, so there's a lot to choose from. Like this jalapeno lime cheddar chicken with some spicy cilantro cauliflower rice. And it doesn't just stop at Factor meals, there's juice, smoothies, desserts like cheesecake. Whether you're gaming, at work, need a quick meal on the go, Factor's got your back. So thank you to Factor 75 for sponsoring today's video. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGCOOLNOV50 for 50% off of your first box. You can click the link in the description or scan the QR code at the top of the screen with your phone. Dragon's Breath is a seasonal pass exotic for Season of the Wish, and it's coming with some good launcher and mag options. Volatile Launch, Black Powder, that's the 100 blast radius. We have the exotic intrinsic trait, Composite Propellant. Rockets embed themselves, instruct targets, and periodically eject incendiary fuel that inflicts scorch. So long as this weapon goes without firing, the more fuel the next rocket contains. The intrinsic trait, High Octane. Igniting targets partially replenishes fuel. It will refill itself from reserves when it gains maximum fuel. So there's a pretty good gameplay loop here. I want to start at base, the fuel. At base, when it's empty, say you just fired your first shot, it takes 9 seconds to get to ×2. Then for every stack after that, it takes 6 seconds all the way to max stack ×5. So 27 total seconds to reach ×5. That's just at base, but we can add in high octane. Ignitions partially replenish fuel. As ignitions go off, it gives you a little bump. If it gets a ×5, it's going to reload immediately. What's cool about this? An ignition is an ignition, so incandescent weapons, something like Caliban's Hand. For the refill part, when you proc an ignition, it's going to feed Dragon's Breath. Every ignition gives you 2 stacks. It would go from 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and so on. I'm going to come back to this. So with a 27-second window at base, the weapon does really revolve around the ignitions. When it's fired, it leaves a little trail of fire similar to a thermite grenade, and this is important because that also applies Scorch. A boss or an enemy, they're going to be walking around it, or adds. You also have the rocket that's stuck inside the enemy, ejecting the fuel, the Scorch. That's going to apply Scorch. With all the ads running around into it, the boss walking around, the ignitions happen. And I've noticed it does a really good job of keeping your target fairly in place, but there's a lot of different ways you can go about Dragon's Breath. Because at base, it can do it by itself, those ignitions, but this is where the stacks matter. Right here, I'm on a Night Stalker, so no solar subclass, none of those aspects, fragments, nothing helping me out. I have 2 stacks. I hit the target walks around a little bit. I'm starting my reload because I thought it was over, but another ignition happened. So it got to ×5, it reloaded itself. So just as a base, you need 2 ignitions for this thing to reload itself. But when you start off with a 5 stack, that means more fuel is going to be ejected. That means more Scorch, that means it's just all going to be longer. So the 2 ignitions are going to go off, it's going to refill itself if you start off at ×5. There's those moving parts, enemies walking in and out of the scorching floor, how many stacks you have for the fuel cell, other things getting colladed. So there's some different things to it. So not even on a solar sub like right here, the loop works. It can self-do it, you can help it right along. And with Night Stalker, I can throw the smoke, apply Weaken first, and then start doing this loop. But on solar, it's a lot better. Like right here with Sun Bracers. And this is what I think is really important about Dragon's Breath, where I think that the play loop sits and where it should be played. Starting with Sun Bracers and exotic armors like Dawn Chorus that help apply Scorch, like all of that's going to help, but with Sun Bracers, you're starting off with some Scorch stacks. Throw some grenades. The more Scorch you apply at first, the faster it's going to reload itself. And just at base on Dawnblade, maybe a solar grenade, shoot Dragon's Breath, then Celestial Fire, or on Hunter, a solar nade, then Dragon's Breath, or the fan knives. There's a ton of ways to start the Scorch loop. And when you start it, once Dragon's Breath gets on them, it's almost like you have an auto-loading rocket. It's almost like Witherhoard, almost like Anarchy a little bit. And to be clear, like at the core, Dragon's Breath is a lasting impression rocket with extra steps. That's what it is. It's a massive one though. But one of my favorite things, you can do things like Foe Tracer. It's been awesome. Again, especially as a solo. You start with a fan knife or a solar nade, whatever. Relentless Tracker, damaging a powerful combatant with an ability gives you a temporary bonus to weapon damage matching the subclass. And defeating that target grants you a fire sprite. Well, it's just obliterating. So one thing that I need you to consider and keep in mind, the loop goes as fast as you make it. Damage-wise, overall DPS, because you have Solar Surge, we get in the artifact, the old school Argent Ordnance is there, firing a rocket consumes a stack, you get increased damage and reload. We have Overload Rocket for Overload champions. Let's all remember too, that's on there, but also Ignition Stun Unstoppable, so this thing has Overload and Unstoppable this season. There's Raise Precision, while Radiant Precision Final Blows cause combatants to ignite. Solo Operatives, while you're solo, you deal increased damage. Revitalizing Blast, causing damage with the solar ability, weakens champions and bosses. There's Flint Striker, Heart of the Flame, Blast Radius, Kindling Trigger, so many. The artifact kind of revolves around Dragon's Breath. And as far as like damage as a group, if you just shoot it, I don't think that it's going to be good. Like it's going to be okay. Maybe you tractor cannon first, then 3 to 4 people, getting those ignitions to go off. But ideally, the loop here, it's going to be best on a solar sub, so that's where I'm going to start. You start with a Scorch, whether it be a solar grenade, a fan knife, whatever, shoot the Dragon's Breath, and then get on like a controlled burst fusion. Dragon's Breath is going to auto reload, you're going to come back to it, shoot Dragon's Breath, and keep going. That's where it's going to be good. Like even things like Volt Shot. Volt Shot's crazy good with it, because all that Scorch is constantly proccing the Jolt. So that's going to be hitting your main target, but also spreading around to all the ads. So the ads are getting scorched, they're getting jolted. A lot of ignitions, a lot of collaterals. It's pretty good. And in the end, the whole goal is for it to reload itself. Everything about the solar kit helps it, whether it be some aspects on Dawnblade, where things last longer, or fragments like spreading more Scorch, or spreading Scorch with ignitions. The ignitions are larger. Like all of that helps Dragon's Breath. You want those ignitions going off in the background, and the stacks matter. The ×5 matters. You don't really want to fire this thing back to back to back. You're going to DPS with other things, come back to it. That's going to end up being more DPS. And what should help that is the Pyromancer Exotic Catalyst. And with everything that I went over, I'm going to speculate what I think is going to happen. So it states that it passively replenishes your Dragon's Breath fuel faster. Eliminating combatants with this weapon causes them to spawn fire sprites, which is what I'm doing with Foe Tracer. So the fire sprites are nice. The main thing is replenishing the Dragon's Breath fuel faster. So that could mean a couple things. Let's keep in mind it takes 6 seconds to go from stack to stack once you get to 2. So maybe it cuts it to 3 or 4. And overall, that's going to help it. It's going to help it a ton because remember, an ignition gives you 2 stacks. It's passively gaining it faster. It's going to help it. On how I view this thing being used, I dare say the catalyst is necessary. Obviously, we're going to wait and see. Real quick with the Crucible, I used it a couple matches. It's always going to be at ×5 because it's just sitting there in the background. Well, it just kind of holds down an area, and for whatever reason, people run into it. The Scorch finds them. Pretty funny. And where I started initially is where I'm going to end. I play solo a lot, and that's, you know, doing the Master Lost sectors, that's doing the seasonal content, and it's been really, really good. One of the cooler things about it, which, I mean, this is how you don't want to use it, but it's there. If you're ever getting swarmed, remember it's essentially a lasting impression rocket. I've just shot it at my feet and put some distance between, and that whole area is just going to be scorched out. You just want to shoot this thing into ads? No, but something like this is there. You can shoot it right at your feet and just keep going. It's been fun. It's going to be good for Unstoppables. It's going to be good for Overloads. It works really, really well for me. And as far as a redesign, overall, I think they did a really good job. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Let's talk about Dragon's Breath down below. What are your initial thoughts on it? Are there any build synergies that you'd like to share? Let's talk about it. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.